In 2009, I was tricked into playing this new game called League of Legends. I didn't even know what the term MOBA meant, and honestly, I wish I still didn't. We're talking about like back when it was more common that there wasn't a jungler on your team. 2 top laners, baby. What a time. In fact, I remember my first ever game of League. I locked in Sion and my friend locked in Warwick, and we both went top lane because that's how it would be back then. There was a tutorial back then, but it really sucked and didn't teach you anything to do with the meta, largely because I'm assuming the meta hadn't been formed yet, but yeah. Every game, I just felt like I was winging it, and I kept on losing and dying and raging, but for some reason, I just kept playing. At that time, I still kind of had that drive to get better at every single game that I played, and I still do, but not like that anymore. I would uninstall this shit so fast in 2024. Even if I was super bad at League back then, I got really into the pro scene as it was coming up because I was coming from the pro scene of another game. It just really intrigued me. I love Riot's games so much that I actually got the highest rank possible in Legends of Runeterra, and there are dozens of us, okay? Speaking of Legends of Runeterra, that game's release actually coincided with my favorite time ever as a Riot fanboy. And yes, I will admit that I have been a Riot fanboy, at least in the past. And it was the 10-year anniversary of League of Legends. They released this Riot Pls video, Pls, whatever. And they basically talked about the future of Riot as a whole going forward, and League of Legends, of course. To me, starting from this Riot Please video through the next couple of years was what I would consider the golden age of Riot games. Like, they just straight up announced Legends of Runeterra right there in that video and then gave us a beta right away. There was like, they weren't playing around back then, dude. They like had it together. That video had the Arcane announcement and like 10 other projects were announced in that video, dude. The dopamine rush from watching that 10-year Riot Please video, I'll never forget it, man. That was like my favorite time as a League of Legends-er guy. Not too long after that video came out, Riot actually announced that they were developing an MMO, which is something that all of the fans of League in their universe had wanted forever. So the fact that they actually announced this was so mind-blowing, and I think myself and so many others thought that like Riot was on top of the gaming world. The MMO was going to be sick, and I could not wait. Well, time has taught me that I could wait, actually, and I might actually be waiting for forever. Everyone knows the term golden age, right? Like the peak of something. The worst part about a golden age is that you don't really know that you're in a golden age until it's over. The golden age for Riot games and for League of Legends and the universe surrounding it, I genuinely feel like is over. I was a Riot fanboy, and I loved everything that they did, maybe even when I shouldn't have sometimes, but that feeling is no longer. That is over. There's no easy way to explain this, but here I go. They announced a ton in this video, but I'll just go through it one by one. Okay, first thing, holy shit. It's Joe motherfucking Tung. He is now the lead developer over at Theorycraft Games, and they're creating Project Loki, which looks dope. I bet Riot Games is really missing him right now. Okay, the first thing that is not League of Legends announced in this video, but is still League of Legends adjacent, is the announcement of Wild Rift. I've played a few games of Wild Rift, and it's fine. I'm not much of a mobile gamer, but I know it's super popular, and from what I can tell, Wild Rift seems to be doing great. Mobile games are gigantic. League of Legends is a gigantic game. It's a humongous market. It's a super popular game. So like, it's just a no-brainer that this thing probably has millions and millions of players every day. And this from this video was a huge success. There's no denying that. The next part of this video is the eSports section. And this is where things start looking a little rough for Riot in hindsight. Esports as an industry had its bubble burst last year. So Riot Games, naturally being one of the biggest esports companies in the world, was largely affected by this. Giant player salaries and an inability to make esports profitable have caused Riot to have to scale back operations greatly in the West over the last 2 years. In the video, they talk about how they can't wait to continue growing the League of Legends esports scene and how great it's been and how they look forward to the future. But with hindsight, we know now that the bubble burst and yeah, none of this looks great. As far as the specifics of what they talked about, they did give a little plug to their pro view, which was like you could see the pro player's point of view instead of watching like the broadcasts that everyone sees. It was a cool little feature, but it was hidden behind a paywall. It never got super popular, and it was only running for 3 years before they shut it down. So that's a failure. This is something that stuck out to me in this video, was in the esports section, they had the announcement of this League of Legends esports manager game. And I bet everyone's thinking, wow, that's really lame. In fact, you've probably never even heard of this League of Legends esports manager game, and you want to know why? Because this is the only time we ever heard about it in the West. In the video, they announced that starting in 2020, the app would release for the LPL and in China so that they could start playing the game there. And it did, but it was actually a gacha game, and they gotcha. And fuck you, Riot, and fuck you, gacha games, and gambling, and all that shit. Moving on. In another section of the video titled Legends, they start playing some sick frickin' tunes, dude, and they start sneak peeking all these games that we've never seen before, and my mind was blown. They should have never done this, man. This is where I got all my excitement. This is how I got my goddamn hopes up, and this is why we have this video today. So the section starts off by showing some things we already know. League of Legends gameplay, TFT gameplay, Wild Rift gameplay, but then we randomly see a fighting game? Like, what are we doing here? Are we expanding the kind of games that we make at Riot? Are we expanding our universe into different genres? Because that sounds fun. Personally, I've always loved the world of Runeterra, and I've really enjoyed having other ways to explore the world of Runeterra outside of getting my butt banged inside of League of Legends. So things like this universe website that have all the characters' lore and the area lore and stuff, I really am into. I really like it. Okay, so we had a fighting game cooking, and that alone is crazy, but what's next? An isometric top-down ARPG? What? What? Since when? A card game? A first-person shooter? What are we even doing here? I'm having an overload. All of these, not necessarily announcements, but we know what they're doing here. They're teasing these games and saying like, hey, we intend to release these in the near future, have pretty much all failed or not panned out in one way or another. The fighting game, which we now know has probably been in development for 7 or 8 years, considering we saw gameplay of it about 6 years ago, still has not been released, nor do we have a release date. Actually, just kidding. They recently announced the game, and it's called 2XKO, and they want to release it in 2025, which isn't a date, but it's a year. Assuming that it doesn't get delayed. That is a long-ass development cycle, and they better hope that they've made the new Mortal Kombat with this game, is all I'm gonna say. The next tease in the video, though, is what piqued my interest the most. All we really got from this video was these few seconds of teasers that they showed us, but man, I was so interested in this game. To me, it looked like Diablo League of Legends Edition, which at the time, and honestly still now, has me hyped up, because playing an ARPG in the world of Runeterra sounds sick. I needed more info on this project, and in the coming months, we would get a little bit more info. Like, the name of the game was called Project F, but honestly, there's like no legit info out there outside of the fact that this game is an ARPG and it's called Project F. To this day, 6 years later, they teased this in this video and we got no info, and man, they teased the fuck out of me. No doubt about it. This ARPG lives rent-free in my head. After this amount of time, I'm kind of just going to assume that this project is dead and that it was another failure, so it's unfortunate, but is what it is. Although Riot has proven with 2XKO that they do like that decade-long development cycle, so maybe I'm wrong, and I hope I am, but yeah. Moving on, the next thing that they tease in the video is a quick little few-second clip of Legends of Runeterra, which at the time we had no idea what that was, but they teased it and then later went on in the video to actually announce the game and even release a beta right there. Huge W for me at the time. Given the theme of this video, you can probably guess where this is going. Like most things Riot announced in this 10-year video, ultimately the game was a failure, I guess, no matter how much I liked it personally. In early 2024, Riot announced it would essentially be sunsetting Legends of Runeterra, meaning little to no new content after this year and no more PvP updates. It's being put on life support. Riot cites that Legends of Runeterra isn't a valuable business for Riot, meaning it loses them money. That really sucks for us Legends of Runeterra fans, because I do feel like for a card game, it was like immersive as it could be. I'm gonna miss this game. The last big game shown in this Riot Pls video, and I'm sure this was tactical as it seemed ready to release, was the first-person shooter, later to be known as Valorant. It was clear that Riot basically announced Valorant in a ready-to-play state, as the beta and the game itself came out closely afterwards. While Riot clearly has set the precedent for announcing shit way too early, like when it's still in the thought bubbles of someone's mind in some cases, I have to give credit where it's due. Valorant was a very successful launch, and the second game Riot needed to propel them for years forward. The Valorant pro scene is successful and loved. I constantly see content from it, even though I haven't played the game in years, since release basically, and the community still seems to love it. So let's recount the list of what was mentioned in this video and how they've done in hindsight. I feel like 5 years is more than enough time to judge all these announcements fairly. Wild Rift was obviously a success. Esports expansion was obviously a failure. Some of that not really Riot's fault because the whole industry died, but Riot played a big part in the industry. Esports manager, mega failure. 100% mega failure. 2XKO is a little tougher to judge, I guess, because clearly they're actually making progress on this and do plan to release it. But dude, 6 to 8 year development cycle in this thing. We still don't have a release date. No one's actually played it. Failure to me. Sorry. The ARPG teaser I love so much never even got an official announcement, and for all intents and purposes seems dead. So I'm gonna call that a failure too. Just don't even tease it in the video if you don't plan to do anything with it for 6 years. Legends of Runeterra never found its footing, even though, you know, I liked it a ton. People obviously didn't, because Riot said it doesn't make them any money, so it's being sunset. So yeah, I'd say overall that's a failure. Valorant, no doubt that this was a success for Riot. So of the announcements in this video, I feel like Valorant and Wild Rift were the two actual things you could say were successful. That's not a great hit rate, considering you could almost look at both of these games as a copy and paste. Wild Rift is League of Legends, although different. It's not like they reinvented the wheel. And I think you could say the same thing for Valorant, essentially being their take on Counter-Strike. With hindsight, we can look back at this video and genuinely say that Riot has created much more questions about where they're going in the future than answers. But hold on, there's more. Shortly after the Riot Pls video, we got two major announcements from Riot within that same year. One being Riot FORGE, which was a way for independent game developers to use the Runeterra world to create their own video games by essentially using Riot's IP and profit sharing. It was a nice model and created 3 solid games over the last few years to varying levels of success. It was another way to scale operations around Runeterra and continue building the world that I and so many other people loved. In early 2024, Riot announced that they would be closing Riot FORGE, no longer producing these single-player titles with independent developers. Another failure for Riot. But the next announcement would end up being the most colossal failure of all. The announcement of the Riot Games / League of Legends MMO was fire. There's YouTubers out there dedicated to this game's existence, and we only even know that it's in development. It's not like there's actually anything to make content on outside of wild speculation. The hype is so big though that this exists. The world Riot has been building for so many years had many fans of their games so hyped for the MMO. This could be the game that finally comes and resets a market that's long been dominated by World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy. And RuneScape if you're a Chad like myself. The Riot MMO was officially revealed in December of 2020, and here we are, April 1st of 2024, no prank bro, and Riot has decided that they are going to completely reboot the development of their MMO. Earlier I made fun of Riot for having decade-long development cycles, but for an MMO, if you genuinely want to disrupt the market, that's likely what it's going to take. Considering they just blew up 3+ years of development by hitting the reset switch on this project, I feel like this is a death sentence for this MMO, whether Riot wants to accept that or not. Riot's actions these last 2 years have been concerning, with layoffs, downscaling of multiple teams across the entire business, and overall perception dwindling. I don't think it's unfair to say, as a previous Riot fanboy, that we're currently witnessing the downfall, the demise of Riot Games. Is Riot Games going to die and League of Legends disappear? No. Of course not. They print money like no other. League of Legends has hundreds of millions of players spread all across the world. Asia loves this game, and that alone is enough to probably propel it for another decade forward. But to say that Riot is currently peaking would be very wrong. The golden years for Riot Games have passed us by, and I think that looking at their popularity and everything related to their games and universe in the West over the last couple years is proof of that. One more thing that I think attributes to the downfall of Riot and the perception of the people is the current state of their flagship game, League of Legends. League of Legends has been out for 15 years now, and let's just not kid ourselves. It's getting worse. I know that there's a lot of ways you can look at this, and ultimately that is only my own opinion, but I will give you the facts that made me come to this conclusion. Once upon a time, the League of Legends store was a pretty fair deal for what it was. This is a free-to-play game with only cosmetics being purchasable, which is exactly the business model that everyone would prefer. The system was simple. You look at the price of the skin in the store, the most expensive thing being like $20, and you steal your mom's credit card and buy that shit, or however you got money in 2010. They even had skins that were super cheap, like less than $5, and that was dope because almost anyone with an internet connection and a PC capable enough to run the game could probably find $5 laying around somewhere to support said game. In 2024, and it's been this way for years, all the skins are pretty much $20. They don't make cheap skins anymore. In fact, they've started pandering to the whales of the community, locking skins behind egregiously long battle passes, currencies, and systems to get the rarest skins. I'm not going to break out my calculator and start doing math on the present day store, but I'd much prefer to just pay $20 straight up for something that I want rather than me being forced to grind the living shit out of this game to the point where I'm not enjoying it anymore. Unfortunately, all games have battle passes now, and we jumped on that ship at the same time everyone else did. Player retention is everything now to these scummy live service companies, and battle passes are key to retention because they cause FOMO if you don't log in and play every day. There's one problem with this though. The battle passes have remained the same price over the years while consistently getting worse and worse content-wise. The battle passes used to have a ton of guaranteed skin shards, items, and currency. If you completed the battle pass in the past, you'd make out with a genuinely nice amount of stuff. You could get the rare skin that costs a ton of currency without charging extra money if you just played a lot, and you could still have some currency left over to get more skin shards or grab bags or whatever you wanted at the end. No longer is that the case. They've essentially made it now for the same price. You must choose whether you want random skin shards or the one cool skin that they have at the end. Monetization strategy aside, the game also has glaring issues and has for years that is so unacceptable for a game of its size and success. For one, there's literally bots in all the low elo normal games that basically just walk around and kill time and force you to lose the game if they're on your team. Also, they can level an account to 30 and be sold for 12 cents on the black market. There's bots like this in ranked too, for accounts to intentionally derank down to iron and then be sold to streamers doing some iron to challenger content or whatever. There's non-stop toxicity that isn't correctly monitored by a human being. Every day on the subreddit or Twitter, you see people getting falsely chat muted for shit that's not even offensive, while my average game still somehow includes being called every gamer word under the sun, yet these people aren't chat restricted somehow. I have no idea. Does anyone remember the tribunal where the community could choose to ban players or not, like a real human player would judge another player? That's a solid system. Another example of the game just genuinely being better in the past, in my opinion. This is a little more conspiracy, but frankly, I don't give a shit. There's a lot of patents out there that you can look at that online live service developers are using that targets player retention stats as a tool for matchmaking. If you think your matches in ranked queue are 100% set up to be an even matchup, I have a bridge to sell you in Baltimore. That might be too soon, but we're gonna leave it in. Riot cares about money, and they get money by players playing their game, and they get that by maximizing how long players are online and how much they're enjoying their experience. If you think for 1 second that the matchmaking system doesn't have some sort of bias toward players remaining online for as long as possible, you are wrong. I promise you that player retention is weighed so much more heavily in matchmaking than it is actually giving you a balanced experience. Ever notice that when you're hard stuck, as we call it, you'll constantly go on winning and losing streaks? Win 5, lose 5, win 8, lose 8. They're literally min-maxing your patience. All competitive games do this now, and it leads to you having to spend like hundreds and hundreds of games to actually rank up. If you're a Masters player or whatever, you're going to be like, shut up, idiot. I can go from Iron to Master in a week. Less than 100 games. It's just a skill difference. Well, why don't you pull your head out of your smelly fat ass for 1 second and think about this. What if your actual skill level was gold, but you got placed in bronze? A gold skilled player will start flying through the early ranks of bronze because they'll be that much better than everyone in the game, and the biggest difference on both teams. But once you start getting closer to your rank, that is going to matter less and less. 4 negatives can outweigh a single positive on a team, and that is going to happen to you a bunch of times on your way to gold. People who are genuinely amazing at this game and aren't average players, like, can't understand this because they genuinely don't experience it, but it's fucking real, dude. The game wants you to stay online for as long as possible, and it doesn't necessarily just want you to be at your base rank right away. Some of this is just the live service industry as a whole. It's inescapable, but that doesn't change the fact that this version of League of Legends, from a few different perspectives, is just a worse game than it was in the past. At least for a jaded ex-Riot fanboy like myself. Alright, so I'm sick of bitching and complaining, but thanks so much for watching this far. I want to know what your opinion on the current state of Riot is down in the comments. Let me know. I'd love to read it. I'll get in there, talk to you guys, and till next time, see ya.